Just a year ago, Syracuse men's lacrosse was scorching through the season, chasing their 6th straight win against the reigning national champions, Notre Dame. Fast forward, and the number 7 Orange are in the midst of a 5-game win streak, with, who do you figure, the back-to-back defending champs in the Fighting Irish on the docket. April's in the air, and so is one of the most anticipated ACC altercations all year. Here come the Irish, here come the Orange, and here comes a live edition of Cuse Countdown. Next.
We're alive and well? And we're alive and well on another episode of Cuse Countdown. Max Gifford, Nicholas Waley, and Luke Burgess getting you set for number 7 Syracuse men's lacrosse's matchup against number 5 Notre Dame. One of the most anticipated games in all of ACC lacrosse and all of college lacrosse for that matter. And the last time we were at this desk, Syracuse was in the midst of their 2-game losing streak. It was right after they lost to Maryland, then eventually went on to lose against Harvard. But since then, Syracuse has rattled off 5 straight wins, and the most recent one, they gutted out a 12-10 win against Virginia.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a really gritty performance by the Orange. I mean, going into the second quarter, I mean, I was at the Dome watching the women's lacrosse game, and I was checking stat broadcast, and I was like, oh my God, what is going on? But we saw them come back, and they were able to make the adjustments. I think that was what really stood out to me in this game, was the way that head coach Gary Gay and his coaching staff were able to adapt to the game and able to just move things around and make sure that they had everything on the table and gave it their all and fought to the very end. I think the defense was absolutely stellar for the last 10 minutes of the game. Syracuse went on that 3-0 run to win the game. And I mean, this is a win that could define Syracuse's season, because if they didn't come back, we would be sitting here talking about a completely different conversation.
Yeah, Nick, one of the most impressive things about this game is that Joey Spallina, or rather I should say Johnny Mullen, got dominated at the faceoff X. Really the first time that that's happened all season long, and Syracuse still found a way to win. And that didn't really get better in the second half at all. He really struggled, and he's been one of the most dominant faceoff guys in the country this year. So to see that happen, a little bit of a shock, but the offense, like you mentioned, comes back in the second half. Really strong performance, comprehensive, and Jimmy McCool as well. He was fantastic in goal.
A win most definitely earned, not given for Syracuse, even though Virginia receiving votes couldn't quite come out on top in that one, despite that strong first quarter, which it seems like it's a different conversation every single game with this team, because just a couple months ago, we were saying, man, this team cannot play in a second half. But now we're saying this team can't play in a first quarter. Just 2 goals against Virginia in that first frame. One of those was a buzzer beater by Peyton Anderson. And then just 2 games ago against Manhattan, they only mustered 1 goal.
Yeah, it's tough because you have to mitigate those slow starts, right, when they do happen. And all of a sudden you're looking at, oh, we're down early. We need to start to come back here and get the offense rolling a little bit. But the conversation has been had, I feel like, every single week over the last 2 months. When is it actually going to matter that Syracuse has slow starts? Today is that day, guys. You cannot have a slow start against the Notre Dame team that is as good as this team is. They've got a lot of diversity in the midfield in terms of weapons. They're going to make you hurt if you go down, and the defense is good enough that they're not going to let you come back in that second half.
I mean, it's just peculiar to me, really. I mean, this is a team that should be flowing with confidence. Well, like we mentioned, 5-game winning streak. You should be able to go right from the front, right from the first face-off. Let's get after this game, and that just hasn't happened. It even happened against the teams that you'd expect Syracuse to be right away. Like against Manhattan, they were down 1-0 in the first quarter. Obviously, they won the game by quite a substantial margin, but this is the ACC. This is arguably the best conference in all of college lacrosse. And I mean, if you start slow and if you're off your game for any point in a game, they're going to make you pay, especially a team like Notre Dame.
Have to set the tone today, Max. It's huge.
Yeah, you're right. Notre Dame is a team that has outscored opponents by over 20 in the opening quarter this year. And midfielder Sam English for Syracuse said, we just didn't stick to our game plan. We knew exactly what Virginia was going to throw at us, and we just didn't execute. So, chance to execute today against the Irish, and another chance for Joey Spallina to execute, who just put up 1 point after a career-high 11 points against Colgate.
Look, I think that's just also the expectations that we have for Joey Spallina. And when he goes up against these ACC teams, we saw this not just this season, but in seasons past, where he has struggled against those better teams. But when he has guys like Owen Hiltz that can step up to the occasion, it does make a difference. However, saying that, I think the way Syracuse win this game today to have any chance of beating the two-time back-to-back national champions is that Joey Spallina needs to have a 5-point performance today at the very least. Because without him and being that X factor, you're going up against a team that has been there and done that and has leaders throughout their team. Joey needs to lead the way today.
No doubt. This is a big chance for him. It's a chance to beat Notre Dame inside the Dome, which I think is going to play a huge factor in the way that this one plays out. But you can't have a repeat performance of last week. Obviously, Spallina does a lot beyond the score sheet, even if he has 1 assist. He made a big impact on that game. He draws the best defender every single time out. But he's got to put some points on the board today because Notre Dame is going to counter hard. You got to have your best player playing at his best if Syracuse is going to get a win.
And John Schroeder most definitely did his job against Spallina in that contest against Virginia. But you're right, Spallina is that slide guy for Syracuse. Really draws the best defender away, leaving so many other options open, which is how Syracuse climbed back in against the Cavaliers by winning by only 2. There was some shakeup in the attack line, though. Trey Deer out. Peyton Anderson came into the fold, did score 2 goals, but it was kind of weird after Trey Deer had back-to-back games with 4 goals.
Yeah, it's interesting because Syracuse has these diversity of options, and Trey Deer, I think a lot of people would say, is maybe one of the, if there's a newcomer of the year award for this team this year, he probably would win it. He's been very, very good. But Gary Gait just talked about the matchup. That's why they got Peyton Anderson in there. They wanted a bigger guy, and the freshman, he stands 6'4", 6'3", and he's got a physical presence for a guy who's just burst onto the college lacrosse scene. Obviously, he was a 5-star recruit, but this attack has to play to its strengths, and I think that really comes back to good ball movement, making sure that you're keeping the defense off balance. When I talk about why you need Spallina to be as good as he can be today, that's because you need to make sure that you're keeping this defense guessing, right? If you don't have Spallina producing points, then all of a sudden those options get whittled down. You're forced to use guys like Owen Hiltz in a more primary role, and Notre Dame can stop that. They can stop a good shooter.
And it's a team sport at the end of the day. It can't just be one guy leading the way. I do think that this season has really exposed the inconsistencies of the attack, especially with some guys, the likes of Michael Leo, who can have those 4-goal game performances, but then there's also the occasion where he just puts up a dud and feel like he's almost non-existent throughout the game, which is definitely a big issue. That's why I think Owen Hiltz has been arguably the most impressive player for Syracuse on the attack this season. I like the way that Gary Gay has been able to adjust and able to match up his attackmen to whatever defense he's coming up against. I think that's what can win you a national championship, is the depth of this team.
And the key for Syracuse was getting Virginia's defense to slide in that second half. That's how they propelled themselves to be in a position to win. But you mentioned lacrosse is a team sport, which leads us to our first break here on Cuse Countdown, because we're bringing in the 4th member of our team. Dan Shalam, our reporter from the Dome, joins us when we come back on CC.
Here we go. We're gonna go out there in the rain. You're gonna get wet. All right, here we go. Okay, quick. Oh yeah, yes. So much fun. Mwah. We're getting so wet.
Nearing face-off time here on Cuse Countdown. Max Gifford, Nicholas Waley, and Luke Burgess ahead of number 7 Syracuse against the number 5 Fighting Irish. A game last year you saw Johnny Mullen win that face-off to lead off this block. Well, last year Syracuse really struggled at that face-off X, but who knows what the story is this year. But the person that can answer that for us is our reporter who's out in the Dome. That is Dan Shalam. Dan, great to be with you, and I have to be completely honest, Syracuse and Notre Dame, it's very easy to look at this game and say, okay, Syracuse has lost the last 7 matchups between the Irish, but what makes this contest so different going up against the back-to-back defending champions?
I think it's the fact that little bit underrated coming into this game, Max. In previous years, it's always been that, Notre Dame's been this massive favorite that Syracuse simply can't handle. And this year, that couldn't be further from the truth. The Orange are 7th, Notre Dame's 5. I still think that both of these teams, being first and second at the beginning of the year, is true. And for me, where Syracuse can compete in this game is staying with the Fighting Irish early on. If you remember last year, the Orange went down 10-5 at the half, and that's been a struggle this entire season. 5-1 at Virginia the other day, even down 1-0 to Manhattan. This Syracuse team is more than capable to compete with the Fighting Irish. They just have to keep it close early on, but that's been a struggle this season.
Dan, look, this is a game that could be so pivotal for both of these teams' seasons. Both started ACC play really well. Both made a big statement in the first game in conference play. But who needs to step up in a big way for either team to win today?
We'll start on the Notre Dame side of things. That's going to be Jake Taylor. He is absolutely disgusting in the midfield for this Notre Dame team. I mean, you want to talk about a guy with experience? He's played Syracuse 3 separate times, and guess what? The first time he played them in 2022, put up 8 points. So he's going to be dominant out there today. 4 2 years ago, 2 last year. He's a guy that is simply a game changer, an X factor, if you will, for this team. And Syracuse has got to monitor him hard. And then on the other side of things, I know the popular answer here is Joey Spallina, but for me, it's got to be Sam English, because Joey Spallina is going against Sean Light again today. Another long pull, similar to last week against Virginia, that's going to have him out on an island, absolutely shut down all day long. And Syracuse has to pivot to guys that know how to play in the big moments. For me, that's Sam English. Saved Syracuse last weekend against Virginia. He needs to step up here today.
Dan, I know we talked this morning about how Notre Dame has 2 first-line midfields. That really is true. This is a very, very good midfield, ranked number 1 in the preseason by Inside Lacrosse this year. How does Syracuse mitigate the fact that they have to essentially go up against 2 midfielders or 2 sets of midfielders that could be the first-line midfielders on their team?
I mean, it's so hard, Luke. You look at this team, and they are just so stacked from the top down right now. And then you go to the Syracuse side of things, and the Orange are hurt in the midfield. I mean, Sam English, Gary Gate was talking about it, is working harder than every single player on the entire field. But the Orange don't have 5 Sam Englishes like Notre Dame do. That's going to be the problem for the Orange in this game, is how do you compete in that midfield, and then that taxes the defense and the offense on both sides of things. Notre Dame is just so skillful. There's a reason that they're top 10 for scoring offense and for scoring defense. It all stems back to the midfield. Chris Kavanaugh is going to have himself a day alongside Jake Taylor. For the Orange, it's going to be, how do you compete with that, and how do you slow them down? Gary Gate talked to me about it. He said our defenders have to slide, we have to play tight, and they're not going to leave anybody on an island like they did last week with Virginia and McCabe-Millen. They're going to come out here, play team defense. That is their strategy going into this one. We just got to wait and see if it works.
So a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Dan, when you think about that, I know you were in Charlottesville last week. How do you think Syracuse can actually come out on top in this one?
Yeah, I think that you can come out on top in this one if you are Syracuse. And there's kind of 2 keys to the game. Your long pulls have to be sharp. We didn't see them really lock in Virginia until the second, third quarter of the game, and that put the Orange down 5-1 early. If that happens here today, I can tell you one thing. Syracuse is going to lose. So that's the biggest thing for me, and then the offense. We've seen it all year long. It's been slow to start. Michael Leo didn't have a hat trick till that third quarter. Owen Hiltz didn't have 2 goals till the fourth. They've got to get going early and keep pace. We know that this Notre Dame team loves to blow teams out of the water. In every win but one this year, they've had 14-plus goals. The Syracuse defense is going to be taxed. Joey Spallina is going to be guarded. But at the same time, there is still a world where Syracuse comes out on top. I think they can do it. It's just going to be a matter to see if we can actually show out on it.
Well, I'll tell you what, the energy is already palpable in the dome, can already feel it. The gold chrome domes are only shining bright, second to Dan Shalam's beautiful blonde hair. Dan, thank you so much for joining us. And make sure to follow him at Dan_Shalam for live updates during the contest. You'll hear him after the game as well on Orange Press Pass. Dan, thanks so much. All right, and when we come back here on Cuse Countdown, we talked a lot about Syracuse. We just got Dan's perspective, but now it's time to break down the Irish. Here they come on the other side of Cuse Countdown. I know what you're thinking. How do two brunettes and a blonde become experts on the Irish? Trust me, we don't have to be gingers to know this. Max Gifford, Nicholas Waley, and Luke Burgess getting you set just moments away between number 7 Syracuse and number 5 Notre Dame. Another top 10 tilt in the dome for the Orange. And all right, let's talk about the Irish. Back-to-back defending champs. There's no way else to put it. These guys still are defending their crown, but this year have faltered just a couple more times than they did just a season ago. Have lost a lot of pieces this past year, but still a force to be reckoned with.
Absolutely. I think just the flow of college teams and they having to make adjustments and having to have guys make that step up. And honestly, the two losses this season were to Maryland and Ohio State, particularly the Maryland game, went right down to the wire. It was at a neutral site as well. Look, I think that it's a little bit of a red herring that those two losses, maybe the Ohio State game was a little bit worrying, but that Duke performance last time out, I think, was really telling of how good this Notre Dame team really is. This is a Blue Devils team that is certainly no slouch, and they are expected to compete at the top of the ACC throughout this season. And look, I think that this is a Notre Dame team that still has the chance, maybe not as favorable as they have in the past, to get a third straight championship. Of course, it is unbelievably difficult to get 3 in a row, almost impossible. But if there's any team that could still do it, it's the leadership and it's the talent of the Fighting Irish.
Well, they can certainly put you away. You talked about that loss to Ohio State, Nick. That was really one of the hottest teams in the country. After they lost their opening game, they went on a huge run. But the rest of the season, I mean, this team has been very compact. And you talked about their win against Duke. They can really demoralize teams. It does not matter how good you are, how much talent you have. Personally, I don't think Duke is that great of an ACC team this year. They're obviously still strong, but that's why I talked about the fast start being so important today, because Notre Dame knows how to put teams away quick. They've got that depth in the midfield. They can move the ball into attack and score in transition so easily. I think with some of the best in the country, so you need to make sure that early on in this game, make them uncomfortable. I think you got to establish the physicality really early. Make sure that you know you're playing in your house, and you want to make sure that you control the pace quickly and early.
Well, it might be hard to fathom that this Notre Dame team could actually compete with Syracuse despite not having Pat Cavanaugh in the fold, despite not having Liam Entenmann in the fold. You're talking about the best attacker and the best goalie in the entire nation last year. But if you actually look at the Notre Dame stats last season, Pat Cavanaugh did not lead the team in points. It was Chris Cavanaugh, who is still on the team. And boy, oh boy, if Syracuse thought they had their hands full with McCabe Millen, they have a whole other deal with Chris Cavanaugh.
Yeah, and he's leading them again in points this year,
right.
Max. He's really good. 35 points, 20 goals, 15 assists so far this year. And I think it's the diversity of the way that he can attack the goal is what makes him the most dangerous. Syracuse needs to do a great job of isolating him, because you mentioned McCabe Millen. The way that they were unable to do that last week was hugely detrimental to the offense early on in that game. You need to make sure that you're shutting down Notre Dame's offense, because they have a plethora of options. And if you shut down Cavanaugh, that's not the end of the story. There are other guys on this team who can score. So make sure that you neutralize that number one option, a la what Virginia did last week to Joey Spallina, but then continue that to the rest of this offense. Make sure that, like I said, I think it just comes back to physicality. You really need to establish that edge in this game.
I think the one thing for me that stuck out to me just in the last few seasons as well is just that leadership quality that Chris Kavanaugh actually has. I mean, it's arguably my biggest gripe with the Syracuse team at the moment. I just feel like there isn't that leadership who's going to pull you through the trenches. I think Chris Kavanaugh has done that in a big way especially since he was even a sophomore. I feel like he's made that step for the Fighting Irish, and that is why they have gotten to this point, why they've been so successful.
Yeah, Kavanaugh's top 10 in the nation in points, leading the third best offense in the entire country. But like you mentioned, he's not just the one doing all of this. There's a reason they have the third best offense in the country, and it's because they have plenty of other threats around them. That attack line for Notre Dame, including Chris Kavanaugh, they've combined for 36 goals in their last 2 games.
It's really impressive. It is a little bit top heavy, I would say. Comparatively, they have three guys who are in double digits in points, and Chris Kavanaugh is a big reason why that they've been so good. But the likes of Jake Taylor has been, like Dan said earlier, really made a big step up this season. I do think that they need a few more guys to make a little step on the goal scoring front, but otherwise they are, like Max said, still one of the best scoring teams in the country.
Yeah, I mean, it starts, like you said, at the top, and then it continues down. You've got a guy like Jordan Faison, who's got tremendous speed in the midfield, can really dish off the ball well. You need to make sure that you're putting pressure on these guys during their offensive possessions because they're going to move the ball quickly. Syracuse obviously has those options to, spread the ball around, get multiple guys involved, but I don't think it's quite to the level. You look at a guy like Devin McClain. On a lot of teams, even in the ACC, he could be the #1 scorer, and yeah, the numbers aren't maybe as eye-popping as some of the other guys that you'll look at, but I think the way that he can distribute the ball and take the ball from Kavanaugh is really impressive, makes this Notre Dame attack so versatile.
Well, when you have 2 top 10 offenses, that certainly help going up against each other. But how about 2 top 10 defenses as well? This is our Cuse Countdown marquee matchup ahead of SU and indeed the goalie matchup. Thomas Ricciardelli and Jimmy McCool. No longer Will Mark, no longer Liam Entenmann, and these two have made easy work of a lot of their opponents this year. Notre Dame, I mentioned, have only allowed 2 teams to score in double digits this season, but Jimmy McCool, and I don't mean to sound cliche, has been so McCool calm and collected this entire year. But Luke, what makes McCool and Ricciardelli so effective for their respective squads?
Thanks so much, Max. We know that to be a top team in the country in lacrosse, you have to have a top stopper. And that, fortunately for Syracuse and Notre Dame, they both do. Let's take a look first at Jimmy McCool and one of the plays that he made last weekend in the second half against Virginia, because he really flipped the script on its head in the second half. You see him make a great save here after a start of a really long Virginia offensive possession. They had a lot of those. They were putting a ton of pressure on him. He had one of the weaker first halves that he's had since the Harvard game where he got pulled. You see him right here, get a pass out to Michael Grace, and then some great identification from the long ball. Whips it downfield, full field pass. Peyton Anderson out there to catch it. He turns inside, bomb shot in the top of the net. Syracuse gets a goal. Defense to offense, it works really well. That's the poise that McCool has that you don't see out of a lot of guys who are playing in their first year. But on the Notre Dame side, Nick, you do have another first-year stopper who's been particularly impressive so far.
You absolutely do. Thomas Ricciardelli, very similarly to Jimmy McCool, took 2 years to get his opportunity to be the starting goaltender, and he has taken it with stride. Let's take a look at some of the differences, though, between him and Jimmy McCool. The first is just physically, he's a little bit shorter at 5'11", but that does have his advantages. It means that he can get to those ground shots a lot easier, down to his knees. He's really good at getting anything in and around the crease. The second, a little bit similar to McCool, is that he's really good at getting the transition offense going, and also, I feel like he's a little bit more risky with it as well. You see this against Duke. Look how far away he comes from his own crease. Look at this, about 20-25 yards away. He's able to collect it even under pressure. He's looking downfield, cool and calm, and gets the Notre Dame attack going. And this happened not just once, but a couple times against the Blue Devils in the Notre Dame season opener. Cool and calm is the attack for Notre Dame, finding the back of the net, and it was all because of Thomas Ricciardelli, quick on the attack. But when we come back, we are just moments away from game time between Syracuse and Notre Dame. We've got our keys to come. Don't go anywhere on Cuse Countdown.
Two teams with championship aspirations about to do battle in the Dome. Wrapping up here on Cuse Countdown, Max Gifford, Nicholas Waley, and Luke Burgess ahead of the number 7 Orange against the number 5 Notre Dame. But before we get to that, this game does have some big NCAA tournament implications. Mentioned these two teams both in the top 10, but Inside Lacrosse just dropped their first bracketology yesterday. Right now it very much favors a team like Notre Dame, does not favor a team like Syracuse, who currently would have to play on the road against the best defensive team in the nation in Army.
It might be the absolute worst possible first round matchup for the Orange. This is a Syracuse team that lost to Army last year, and like you mentioned, Max, one of the best defensive teams in the country. This is definitely not where the Orange want to be in about a month's time. They need to pick up a win today, and they've got to finish the ACC season strong.
Right, you said it, Nick, and it's because Syracuse's best win right now is against the Johns Hopkins team that's only ranked inside the top 20. No top 10 wins. So that Virginia win, sure, it's great to be 1-0 in the ACC, but that team wasn't even ranked. I mean, that matchup is technically ranked lower than a Harvard game that you had, ranked lower than Hopkins, like you said. So when you look at the quality of that win last week, it doesn't really hold up that much when you're actually going into making this bracket. And then speaking about the Army-Syracuse matchup this upcoming week, or this potential Army-Syracuse matchup, you do not want to be at West Point against a team this tough. They will beat the hell out of you. Syracuse has not done well against physicality in the past. I don't think they would do well against them in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
Now that being said, this game is not the end-all be-all. Syracuse still plenty of other chances against number 1 Cornell in a week. They also play UNC and Duke, two teams that are also in the top 10 right now, or just outside that top 10 picture. But back to the game at hand, Syracuse or Notre Dame, one of the teams has to come out top. What are your keys to the Cuse coming out on top over the Irish?
Well, for me, it's about winning the fourth quarter. I think this game is going to be close right throughout. And the way that Syracuse are able to win this game is if they win that fourth quarter. That they've had the trouble of coming out of the gates, and it's been an issue for the Syracuse team throughout the season of starting slow, like we mentioned in the show. If they can win the fourth quarter and how they've been performing much better in the second half as of recently, they can get this win. But it's a big but. I think this is going to be the toughest game for the Syracuse in the ACC.
You got to start fast and you got to finish fast. It's kind of akin to what you were just saying, Nick. Syracuse needs to come out of the gates hot, put Notre Dame on its back heel, make them press a little bit, get them out of their offensive game plan, and then finish that fourth quarter like you just talked about. Put a stamp on this game if you're ahead.
All right, well, we know everything that you need to know and what we need to know ahead of Syracuse and Notre Dame, but now it's time for our predictions. I didn't get on the board last time, excited to put my name into the ring, but as far as you guys are concerned, who do you have in this match?
I think I'm still going to pick Notre Dame. This is a Fighting Irish team that has just been solid throughout the year, even with those two losses against Maryland and Ohio State. They're going to win 13-11. I think Syracuse will not win the fourth quarter. I know that's what I need them to do to get the win. I don't think it's actually going to happen. So this is going to be a crucial game for Syracuse, and if they are going to get the win, they need to come out strong.
One difference in this game: Syracuse is at home. The Orange roll 13-12, and it's because of that home crowd, potentially the biggest crowd in lacrosse so far this season.
I'm a hater. Give me the Irish. 16-14 Irish's offense. Just going to be a little too much to handle for the Orange, I think. That's about all the time we have for this episode of Cuse Countdown. I want to give a big thank you to our executive producer, Dan Papillo, associate producers, Jocelyn Mejia, Jason Stilakis, and Grace Bartels. It's been a great semester of Cuse Countdown. So for Luke Burgess, Nicholas Waley, I'm Max Gifford signing off for now. Enjoy the game, everyone.